Okay, so we're going to go live in a couple of minutes. If you feel uncomfortable about having your video on when we're on Facebook Live, feel free to turn it off, but I like to see your smiling faces. So if we can keep it on, that would be amazing. While it's setting up. So we're going to run till about 11 o'clock, so about an hour, maybe a little bit longer, but mostly an hour. If we have any questions, please pop them in the chat as we go through. As always, there'll be plenty of time for me to have a chat and for us to talk through any of the points. This is a shortened version of a 3-hour workshop that I did a couple of weeks ago. So I'm just covering off the kind of big picture stuff to really introduce you to the idea of how to create compelling content. So let's organize my screen. Let me know if everyone can see that screen.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I don't mind if you mute or not mute, but if there is some noise behind you, please mute so that it doesn't disrupt other people. And let's get started. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I am Jenny Walk, and I'm from Elephant in the Room Consulting, and we're here to talk about creating compelling content. So looking at simple strategies to build engagement through your content. So content is such a big conversation. We have our coaching program, which I know Elizabeth is part of, and we talk about how to engage people through your content. And it's such a big thing because it's everywhere. And like I put in the post, content is everything we do, from the way that we show up to the way that we talk to the way that we do our lives to our web pages, anything that we do. And we often forget, we often sort of take it for granted, and we just write a post and go, I'm sure it'll be enough. But so sometimes we need a few strategies. And as you talked, Elizabeth, you posted something that's very personal and got an incredible number of connections and likes and engagements. But we can post something that's really valuable to some people and it doesn't get any engagement. So why is that? So we're going to talk through some of the strategies that you can do to boost your engagement and talk to your audience where they need to be. So for those online and watching through Facebook Live who don't know me, I'm Jenny Walk. I'm a business coach, and I specialize in helping provide clarity, structure, and process for small to medium businesses. My passion is around helping people get clarity about why they're in business. I wasn't always a business coach. I started life in the Air Force some 30 years ago. No, not quite that long, 25 years ago. And it was my very first love. And I became a project manager, essentially, as a security police officer running events. Over the last 30 years, I've done a range of things from major events, government, private sector, and as a leadership and development coordinator or sales manager for large companies. But in the last 4 years, I've really, I guess, landed on my feet, if you like. And that's funny because I jumped out of a plane 4 years ago without a parachute, wondering how that would happen. So after being in business and in corporate life for many, many years, I realized that that wasn't my passion anymore. It didn't love me as much as I loved it. So I started my business. And my business took me to Barcelona. It's taken me to Tallinn. It's taken me to New York and all around the world, meeting with clients and engaging with people. It led me to become an author 2 years ago and co-author a book called Ignite Your Life for Women. And now I get to share amazing things like this with you guys. So we talk about in my business, we talk about designing your business. And one of the most important things that we do as a business coach is how we're going to serve people. But when we think about that, often we just kind of stumble along. So if you're a PT trainer, you go, I'm going to be a personal trainer. I'm going to open a business and start, doing personal training. If you're a early childhood teacher, who's someone I talked earlier today, you open a play group and start to become an early childhood teacher, teaching a group that you love. We don't often think about designing our future and designing our business. And so when we're looking at starting a business, and particularly with your content, we want to get clarity around what we do and who we serve and our purpose. And that is everything. In my business, I spend 60 to 70% of all my coaching programs on this piece around clarity. And it's about saying, if I don't have understanding about who I am and what I'm doing, how am I going to know where I'm going to go and what I need to get there? We also need clear, consistent communication with our audience. And it's funny, I had a conversation with someone this morning saying, I post every 2 weeks on my group and I'm not quite sure why I'm not getting engagement. And I likened it to standing in the middle of Garden City or Westfield Shopping Centre with your product every 2 weeks and expecting people to buy it and know who you are. Unless you're consistently showing up and you've got a really clear message, people aren't going to build engagement with you. And it may not be like and trust. It might just be trust. It might be like, but we need to get engagement, and that comes from consistency. When we talk think about what we're going to do, we talk about the structure that we need to run a business. And this can often scare people because we talk about structures as something quite serious and quite formal. But really what I'm saying is about learning how you want to show up on your business and how you want it to run, and in a way that works for you. So for some people, a very structured hierarchy and a structured approach to their business works for them. And others, they have a more fluid, organic approach to the business. What's always true is there's always some core pillars that we need to make sure that we're doing things in a repeatable and consistent manner, because that's the difference between being a business owner and a hobby. And the last one is obviously processes, and that just helps us do things efficiently and effectively, supports our business. It comes down to our actions and habits. So while this is about designing our business, these things also you'll see come out when we talk about content. So for those who know, who've listened to a webinar for me before, I talk a lot about the messy middle. And this is how I'm sure a lot of us feel when we're writing our content. We have this clear vision of what we want our content to achieve and what we want to say with it. But from the time of deciding what we're going to say to actually launching it in the market or sharing that content, it becomes a little messy and we're not quite sure about how we should structure and what we should say and who should we share it with. And if it works really well, should we reshare it? And that's where we sit in this messy middle. And this messy middle exists in all parts of business, whether you're, a 6 or 7 or 8 figure business, right down to if it's a hobby that you're just starting. We sit in this place going, what do I do next? And how do I untangle? And so this is where we get to simple strategies. Does that make sense? Awesome. So these are my 3 pillars of business. Oh, if the images come up. Clarity, structure, process. And I just went through those briefly, but I really want you to focus as we're thinking about your content, always come to these 3 points. What am I trying to share? How do I share it? And then the methodology and the systems that allow me to do that consistently. Whether it's we're talking about finance, delivering a product, sharing your message, organizing your day. These 3 pillars cover all parts of the business. But enough about me and my business. I want to talk about you. So I'd like you to take, and some of you have done this exercise, and if you've done it, I'll be interested to see what differences you might have now. I'd like you to take 2 minutes, and I know that's not very long, but I want you to be really quick and responsive. I want you to write down who you are in 3 words. So there's 3 questions that we want you to answer. 3 words that describe you, 3 words that describe what it is you do, and 3 words that describe your business or what you want to be known for. So just 3 words that describe you, what you do, and your business. If you take 2 minutes, I'm just going to put myself on mute. Now, 2 minutes doesn't seem that long when you talk about it, but they were getting close to the last 30 seconds of that. And if you're ready to share, I'd love you to either pop in the chat or even put your hand up and share what your 3 words are for you and your business. Anyone game enough to share?
I didn't get to the business,
okay.
But for me, I put my 3 words were loyal, connected, and intuitive.
Beautiful.
My business, I said what I do is connect, awareness, and resolve.
And resolve?
Yeah.
And so loyal.
Connected.
Yep.
Intuitive.
Yep. I love that you've used that connected word with both yourself and what you do.
Yeah. And the business, I would say, the business is what I want to be known for is recode.
Yep.
Recode and manifest.
Yep.
And connect again.
It's
Or
see how
reconnect.
challenging it is when we bring our words down just to 9 simple words. We could probably, if I asked you to say it, just share with me in as many words as you want, it'd probably flow off your tongue really well, because we've talked about that and many of us do that. But when we bring it down to these 3 words, what we're trying to find is what the essence of our business and ourselves are, and how connected, funny that word, we are to our business. So understanding how we fit into our business. And so when we look at these 3 statements, and so you've got loyal, connected, and intuitive, and you're providing connection, awareness, and resolving. And then you've got this recoding and manifesting and connecting piece. So you, as a statement, we can take these 3 words and actually weave them together to share our story of who we are. So in Elizabeth's cases, we might say that I'm a loyal, intuitive, connected healer who works to build awareness and resolve other people's challenges, or the word what word you might use there. And we do that through recoding and manifesting our future self to bring about a more whole and holistic approach to the world. So something like that, but we're just using those 9 words to layer in a little bit about ourselves and our business in a way that can fit online in content. We can make those 9 words into 900 words, or we could bring them down into just really 3 simple statements. But sometimes it's not just that easy, and every time you do this, you might come up with a different set. But what I encourage you to do is, this is a really great place to start with your content, because these are your core messages. So I want you to think of these 3 words and these 3 statements, or 3 sets of statements, are your core essence, or your brand essence, if you like, your brand identity to some extent. And not in that formal way, but these are the words that keep coming back and resonate with you and who you are. And so when we're sharing our content, what's really important is that we need to be sharing a little bit about us, a little bit about the business, and how we help others. So that's the start of the process. But then we want to consider, what is it that we're offering? And it's a really interesting point, because what are we offering? Are we offering a tangible product? Are we offering a service? Are we offering value? Or is it what we're offering is actually something that's really intangible, a new state of being, a sense of well-being? Is it about aspiration? Am I actually offering or selling a future state and imagination and innovation? Is it tangible or is it intangible? And this is really challenging, because the more intangible your product, the harder it is, or your service, the harder it can be to share that message. But when you're having a very clear product and a clear service, it can have the same effect, because how do you do it without just constantly selling? And this is where we come back to those 3 words. So for somebody like Kerry, as a celebrant, you've got a very clear service offering, right?
Yeah.
But then what does that mean to do that? How do you set yourself apart? And that's when we look at those words about what we want to be known for. So what did you put for those last 3 words, Kerry? What do you want to be known for?
Hold on. Can you hear me at all?
Okay, yeah, you're good.
Oh, sorry. And Mickey too, of course. My last 3 words, I put down empathy, helping, and journeys.
See, beautiful. As a celebrant, it's not just about, it's all those 3 things. So empathizing of the situation, so the different connections, environments, and the relationships you have with the couple getting married, their families, their friends, and all the nuances that happen at a celebration or a funeral indeed. And those pieces allow you to then pull out a point of difference. It's not just about being a celebrant who marries or does naming days or celebrates the life of someone as they pass. So we can use those words to make our point of difference as to who we are. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. So, but what are we offering in a true sense? So what we want to look at here, and this is the distinction between our products. Often we look at what is our solution, right? We focus on our solution. But what we want to do, it's their problem and your products or services. So before we communicate anything, we need to know what our audience are wanting, what they need, and also be really clear about how we're able to solve it. So we do this by 3 questions, and there's a lot of sets of 3s in this workshop today. So there's sets of 3 questions. So what problem are you solving? What is the problem, the core problem that you're solving in your business? So is the problem, is it the fact that you need to legally wed somebody or have a naming day or celebrate a life? Or is it actually about sharing a message? Is it actually about providing connection, closure. What is that problem that is actually going to be satiated through your service or product? And then we think the how. So the what is very simple, it can be very simple. It's the what is the problem. Then how do we solve it? And this is when we start to look at what is the actual offer. How do I solve it? So someone like Elizabeth, we solve it through healing and connection and conversation and engagement and sharing of energy. It's not just I'm handing over something and you get it back. It's a little bit intangible, but the methodology we use helps to describe how we're going to solve the problem. And then that falls into that last piece of how will we deploy it. I realize as I'm reading that out now, you can tell my military background with the use of deploy. But how do we actually now share that? How do we deliver our service and product? So these three things, and getting clarity, there's that word again, around what it is what problem we're solving and how our products do that, allow us to now be very clear about what we want to communicate and what the outcome is going to be. Because if we're confused, 100% guaranteed your customers, your potential customers will also be confused. So what we're saying here is knowing where you want to take your client is just as important as how we get there. So that last piece about clarity about what is the problem. So we need to understand our customer. We need to recognize that our customer is not in the same place that we are, that we need to recognize that they might be on the same journey as we were, or they might be on the same process as we were in terms of learnings and lessons, or very clear about what they want. But they're 2 or 3 or 5 or 15 steps behind us or beside us. They're not in the same place as we are. So our goal is not to get our customer to where we are. Our goal is to understand where they want to go and how we're going to get them there. And that may be distinct sometimes to where we want to get them. Does that make sense to everyone? That distinction between, often we're talking about this is what I think they should do. And I was having a conversation with a client just on the weekend, or a colleague on the weekend, just about this, because they're saying, this is what I believe my customers should have. This is what I believe my customers need. But at the end of the day, when we're communicating with our clients, it's irrelevant where we want to take them. What we need to tap into and bridge the gap is, where do they want to go? How do we bridge the gap between where they are now and where they want to be? That's what our product or service is doing. It's not taking them on our journey, it's taking them on their journey. And there's a really important distinction in messaging. And you might often have seen a lot of posts and social media and even landing pages and web pages, which is all about where the coach wants to take them or where the service provider wants to take them, rather than talking about where the individual wants to go. So we call this the customer journey. Some people call it the funnel. I call it a pathway. Because what I look at doing is, imagine your client is standing at a crossroads and they're looking to go find a destination. So you've identified where they want to go. And now we need to find the really clear direction and a path and instructions for them to get where they are to where they want to be. Because the challenge is they don't know. That's why they've come to us, because they don't know how to do it. They may know what they want, but they definitely don't know how to. And that's why they come to people to provide services or to provide a product. It's because we give them the solution to that problem or that challenge. So again, the 3 questions we talk about is, what is it that they need? How will they find us? And why would they choose you? So on this customer journey, imagine you're driving along and you're asking yourself, why am I going to stop at this particular truck stop? Why does that one, attract me more than the one across the road? What is it that they're offering? Is it the price? Is it the service? Is it the environment that I get to spend time in? What is the difference? And how will they know? And how do they identify what that need is? So these are the questions that we ask when we're thinking about the customer journey. We want to put ourselves in the shoes of our customer and imagine they're driving along or they're walking on that path. And what are the things that are going to help them make decisions? And these are the things that we pop in our communication, that we address in our communication. What do they need? How will they find you? And why would they choose you? Because it also determines what medium we're going to use. So if you might have the best Facebook post, perfectly structured, beautifully written, the call to action 100%, but your customers aren't on Facebook, they're on LinkedIn, or they're now on Clubhouse where you only have conversation, you can't do any written communication. So finding out where they are is really important. So making sure we're on the same map, if you like, as your clients. So next thing is, where are you taking your clients and why? So similar to the customer journey, but now we want to consider, what does it look like? What are we offering them in the end in terms of our solution, and what is that pathway? Because we can take lots of different paths, and customers will often try and they'll move around and they'll go from this side to that side, and they'll make lots of different choices, and they might buy two things at the same time and let go one and then buy another one and stop and start throughout their process, because they're confused. And they've been told they need this when actually they need that. And halfway through the process, they go, oh gosh, I shouldn't actually even be here. So what we do is we say, actually, let's take a step back and think about, what do I want them to do with my communication? Now, has anybody on the call sat back and thought, I'm going to write a piece of content. What do I want them to do with it? No. Now, if you imagine that, it's like saying, we're going to have dinner, but I don't know where I'm going to take you, and we're going to sit here and wait until we decide. So if I have no clarity and I don't provide any direction, we will sit in essentially what becomes analysis paralysis, because we don't really know where we're going with this process. So before we move into the next piece, which is actually talking about crafting the content, I want you to consider what you want your clients to think, feel, and do as they engage in your content. What's the outcome for them? And what's the outcome for us? So when we start to think about what we think and feel and think, feel, and do, we actually start considering how we structure that content. And the way that I consider this is that the purpose of communicational content is to bridge that gap between where they are now and where they want to be. And so we want them to feel differently, think differently, and do something. And our solution will allow them to do that. So as you build communication and as you build engagement, the idea is to move them one step along this bridge each time. So the first piece of content might just be saying, hey, you've got a problem. The second piece of content might be, oh, by the way, you've got a problem. The third piece of conversation might be, other people have the same problem and look what they've done. And so over time, we build this engagement and trust as we move them along the bridge. The important thing to remember is, though, one piece of content is unlikely to take you from one side of the bridge to the other. And that's one of the biggest challenges and biggest mistakes people make when they're doing content, either on social media, digital marketing, or any of the content platforms you can use, is they think I can do this one post and people will come to me straight away. Now, that might happen with some Facebook ads and Google ads, but in most cases, you need to build trust and engagement. It doesn't have to be likability, but at least trust and engagement and value. You need to show that people want to be on this journey with you. So when we think about crafting your content, what is the consistency of your content? What do we want them to think, feel, and do? It doesn't have to be all three. It might just be one today. It might be the action on the third day, and then we put them back into the feeling space. So they're constantly growing and moving toward us and away from their problems. So let's talk about crafting compelling content. One thing I do love and people will see this when I do a lot of content, is I love that alliteration, being able to provide something that's going to engage people. So using things like crafting compelling content, having connections. So even with your work, when we talked about your words, Elizabeth, that word connecting through. So you'd have a theme of connection through all your conversations and all your content without even having to say connection. People will feel connection through the way you weave the words together. So the first thing we want to do is we want to consider what's the intention and the tone of our communications. And this comes in 3 core areas. So we can choose to inspire people. So that's about stirring emotion, creating a memory, connecting on a heart level. We want to educate people, or edutain people, if you like, where we explain and provide education and value, but we want to do it as a dialogue, not a monologue. We want to maybe add some data and case studies, but it shouldn't just be, here's all the information that I know, so you should love me. It's actually about saying, here's a little bit of information that'll help you move forward along the bridge. And then the last piece we want to do is that reinforcement. So repetition through different examples and integrating that message across all the different platforms. If you're only using a single platform, you're going to limit your choice and access to your potential clients. If you're using multiple platforms, that's great, but we want to make sure that the message is consistent. You don't want to be on one side showing one brand identity or one version of you and someone completely different on another platform, because then there's a confusing message for your client. We need consistency. So we think about inspiration, education, reinforcement. We actually think about weaving these things through our weekly content. So let's say we do 5 posts a week, just 5 posts a week. So on a Monday, we might start with an introductory post about who I am, but I'm going to weave a little bit of inspiration in that. So I'm going to talk about my journey of, leaving my previous business or the company I was working with, going to Barcelona, feeling a little bit lost, and then realizing and finding my purpose to start the company. I'm introducing who I am, but I'm trying to create an inspiration piece that actually connects with somebody's feeling of, yes, I don't like my job. I feel like you did when I first left my job, and now I'm not sure where I'm going. And I want to connect with them. Then on Tuesday, what I might do is actually do a little bit of education about what I do. So I might talk about the importance of understanding clarity and structure in your business. And I'll liken it to perhaps some information around people's vision and purpose. There's a beautiful statistic that I found years ago when I was talking about project management that said 80% of what we do is the psychology and 20% of the action. So in that education piece, I might use that as a reference point to talk about understanding how we're approaching our business or our clients or your product. And then we might do another day of education on Wednesday. And then Thursday and Friday, I'm going to talk a little bit about my product and also reaffirm those pieces that I did earlier. So I'll use different examples, or I might actually bring in other information about who I am and reconnect with them on that level. So we want to have this kind of arc or this wave of always sprinkling in inspiration, education, and reinforcement in everything we do. Does that make sense? And does that help your structure and idea of how to do content? I'm getting some nods, so I love that. So how do we do that? It looks all great and it sounds fabulous, but how do we actually do that? So here are 5 simple steps. We're going to go into a little bit more detail in a minute, but 5 very simple steps about creating your content. Thinking about that piece that I just talked about, inspiring, educate, and reinforce. The first thing to remember, and this is probably the most important slide on this, which kind of summarizes it, but the first 2 points are the most important. Your content is not about you. What you write on social media, what you write in documents and proposals, and whether you're doing written content or face-to-face content or live content or whatever it is, it's actually not about you. In fact, no one actually cares how much of an expert you are in what you do. What they care about is, can you help them solve their problem? Can you move them from this side of the river or the bridge to the other side, and how you're going to do that? Now, we show and demonstrate that how piece with our expertise and our experience and the value we're bringing. But what we need to focus on, that content has to be talking about them and how we're going to support them and connecting with them. The second piece is, where are they on that journey? So on their buying journey, are they just looking, going, I'm just dipping my toe in the water and I'm actually not quite sure? If that's the case, you don't, or if they're opening a page and it's always about buy, someone who's not quite ready to buy will be a little bit affronted by that. If they're at the other end of the buying journey where they're basically waiting for someone to, put the contract in front of them, that will get them straight away. But our content has to make sure that it covers all aspects of that buying journey and thinking about where the customers are. Not only on their buying journey, but on their decision-making and their personal decision-making about why they want to go on this journey. So some people can say, I'm ready to buy, but they might still be confused about what they want. So we need to make sure we get clarity around what they want, and we get them to the point where they're ready to say yes to your product or service. And then we want to think about their journey. And we want to make sure we're speaking to them where they're at. And this is one of my favorite conversations I have with clients, is around, where are your clients now? So as I said earlier, our goal isn't to get our clients to where we are. Our goal is to get them to where they want to be, whether that's one step further along their journey or 5 steps further along their journey. The idea is for us to move them through their own personal journey to get them to where they want to be. So when we're talking to them, we need to create the content around their customer journey, not just our sales pitch or our process or our ascension model. We need to structure it in a way so it brings them forward and shows them what's possible in a way that they engage with. And that comes to the next point about why do they need it. So this is that why piece, this is that purpose piece, this is that what is the pain they're feeling, and it comes to that point of the features and benefits of our product. So they care about what we're going to do for them. So what are the features, what are the value that we're bringing to the table, and how do we resonate that through our content? And then, of course, that last piece, where do we want to take them? There's lots of journey connections here, obviously, because what we're doing is saying, I want to understand who you are. I want to understand whereabouts you are ready, how committed you are to make the change, if you like. Now, if you're committed to make the change, how much change do you want? Do you want a little bit of change or a lot of change? Do you need to be taken all the way on the process or just a little bit? And then what do they need? Why are they on that process and that journey? And then at the end, where do they fit into what I have to offer? So we want to think about them first and then discuss, well, how does that fit into me? So for example, today we're talking about creating compelling content. I run a coaching program called the Content Collective. The people on the call today and those people who've reached out to us who couldn't be here today are interested in learning how to create content. If I started talking about a consulting package that talked of the other work that I do, it would not land with anybody here because it's not what they're looking for today. So I need to meet people where they're at. So we're talking about content. We're not talking about business structure. We're not talking about anything else. The conversations around content. So being consistent, I have a clear pathway and I know that this is what we're offering, and there's not confusion on the other end of the phone either or on the Zoom call. So being really clear about your content is very important. So this is a very small slide. I realized I thought the text was a little bit larger, but some of the technical things that we want to do when we create the content, and we can use all of these in the same piece, or we can actually scatter them through. We always like to share a story. Why? Because stories resonate, because stories make it personal and connect on that emotional and heart-centered space. We want to connect to where they're feeling right now, their thoughts, their situation. Make sure that we show them the problem that they're having and how their situation is impacting them. So it's not just saying they've got a problem, it's you have a problem and this is how it's manifesting in your life. So if you're overwhelmed, one of the other conversations we often have is around how to reduce overwhelm. So if you're feeling overworked, you're feeling stressed and you can't get through everything through the day and it's impacting your ability to work. I didn't talk about overwhelm or time management or goals. I just described the problem that they're having. You always want to look at a way of addressing objections, not in every post, but it's important, particularly if you're moving toward the sale. You might be thinking something like, you might be thinking that this isn't for you, for example, or you may have tried something before and it didn't work. So addressing objections like that in your content, particularly when you're doing a video content or Facebook Live, people hear that and connect with that's who I was, then how do I get them to where they would be? Addressing objections can also be that internal block. I'm not ready for it. I don't feel like this is for me. Or, you're just not the right fit. All those conversations we can have, we can talk about it, and then we provide the alternative, why you're the right fit, why you're the best person to serve them at this point, and why what you offer is actually going to help bridge their gap. I love metaphors and analogies. Most importantly, I think metaphors and analogies to connect with people, and I often use quite random ones. At the moment, I use, particularly with conversations around content or goal setting, I use bridge analogies because it's very clear to go, we're moving from one side to the other, and it's a visual that everybody can see. So remember, when you're using analogies or drawing analogies or using metaphors in your content, you need to use ones that people will resonate with and your client will resonate with. So using their language. So there's no point probably talking about maybe if you're, and particularly because we've got some people who work in that spiritual space on the call, talking in a spiritual term to a more corporate environment may not land with them, but you can use an analogy that would work for them and then liken it back to your product. And particularly in the networking work and the work that you're doing, Christine, and even Kerry, as being a celebrant, having those metaphors around finding the right fit and finding someone that's going to connect with you and how you can actually create engagement and community and those feelings of well-being, drawing analogies to other similar areas in their life. Last 2 points when you're doing the content is making sure we're using your language. I was reminded recently by a friend of mine that without me realizing it, I use a lot of jargon. I'm trying to change that more and more. But someone said to me, when I first met you, there was a lot of jargon coming out of your mouth, probably because of that corporate background. And over time, I've been more mindful and aware of the language that I use, using words that resonate with everybody, not just a specific subset. Unless, of course, you only want to talk to that group. If you only want to talk to one group and jargon is how they speak, then that's okay to use it, but it needs to be in connection with your audience, if that makes sense, which is most important. Now, the biggest challenge people have when they're doing content is around planning and scheduling content so they actually get consistency. Because at the end of the day, compelling content comes with consistency. So the most important thing that, as a takeaway is to consider how you can plan your content. And bearing in mind, you don't have to do what everyone else is doing. It has to work for you. So if you've got a full-time job and your business is your side hustle, then you may be only able to post once a day in one post, maybe only 3 times a week. What's manageable for you? As you move into a full-time business, working full-time, that might be able to increase to 3 times a day or 3 posts a day. And then we might go into 3 different platforms. So understanding what you can achieve and what you want to share is the first step to actually planning your content. Now, I haven't got a slide in here, but I want you to imagine a matrix with your week. So I want you to imagine how many times or how many posts you think you can create for each day and the number of places that you might post. Bearing in mind where your clients hang out. So most of my clients hang out on LinkedIn and Facebook, and then growingly, for me, is a growing connection with Instagram. So I make sure that I post on LinkedIn 3 times a week. I don't post on LinkedIn every day. I post LinkedIn 3 to 4 times a week. I'm in Facebook groups every single day, and I write fresh content every single day because I love writing content. But I write 3 to 4 pieces of content every day, and then the amazing Macy will look at how that content's landing. We'll feedback on what's worked really well for us, and the ones that have landed really well, we'll repurpose and reschedule for a minimum of 7 days or 8 days in the future, but sometimes up to 6 months in the future onto a different platform or the same platform again. So when we plan our content, sometimes the start, it's that kind of idea of let's throw everything in and do more content than you would always do. So the first 2 or 3 weeks, we spend a little bit extra time writing content and looking at different ways that it's landing, having a look at how people are resonating, do an education piece, do an inspiring piece, do a repetition piece, and see which ones are resonating with your clients. And then as you progress past the first 2 weeks, you can cut that back to start identifying target and being more targeted with the way you communicate your content. Does that make sense? So we need that kind of big effort at the start. So imagine going to the gym, you want to get that first push in the morning, and then we can kind of, tailor that off as it suits our needs. One way of doing that is, and this is again a small slide for a very big screen, you can do a monthly content plan. So this is designed, and a colleague of mine shared this with me, Martine Van Syn, and she uses this content planning concept for Instagram. This works for Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook. We create a grid for what we're going to post each day, and then we basically find images for that and then write our content. But often the hardest thing to start when we're writing content is, what are we going to talk about, right? How do I get inspiration to talk about something when I have no idea? It's like going to a supermarket when you're hungry and not knowing what you want to eat. So by creating a content schedule like this for yourself, it allows you to say, the first day I'm posting for that month, I'm going to talk about me or my business. So it makes it much easier to focus your conversation. You've got a short Instagram post, a long post on LinkedIn, or a moderate post on Facebook about us. My story might be my family, it might be my clients. Next day is inspiration, and then find an image that inspires you, you write to the image. And this helps you focus and guide your content planning around a set strategy and structure. And then each month you just do the same posts each month. And it allows you to create and focus your effort rather than waking up in the morning and say, oh gosh, I've got to do 3 posts and I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to think about. And trust me, I know what that feels like. I was there a year ago. So this content strategy and structure I've only just started probably in the last 9 or 10 months implemented. And in the last 3 months with my amazing Macy, we've got it sorted out much more easily. And in fact, what I'm going to show you is the way that we schedule, just to give you to show you that, you know, the processes and systems. We talked about that word process. I'm going to flick across, go to how we use Airtable. So we love Airtable, and this is my actual live content. So this is not fake content. This is what we've been posting. And so what we do is each day we have a range of posts, the post type and the platforms or the Facebook groups we're posting in. And Macy provides me an image. You may have seen this a couple of days ago, my favorite images she's done. So this beautiful image, and I look at that and go, okay, what am I going to write in relation to this content and this post? And so then I write my content, and it sits through here. Now I have the luxury of having an amazing VA and Macy supporting me. But if you schedule and structure your own post the same way, where you have your context sorted out about us. So look at the Instagram version. So we have all the different elements that we need for our context. You spend a couple of hours once a month finding all the images that you need for your post. And then you can actually spend a separate time actually writing the captions when it suits you. And you can do those every day, or you can do them in advance, in a block in advance. So we try and do them in advance on us. For this month, we've been a little bit behind. So I've done some of the future ones, but Macy's waiting for me to do the next 2 days, ready to go. And so they're good to go. So it allows us to write content, have my hashtags, and then I can set and forget. So it goes back to that point about planning and taking the time. I'm just going to take a pause there and answer, because I just realized what the time is, and we might stop to ask any questions. Would anyone like to ask any questions about their content? Feel free. Lots of reflection happening, I think.
Jenny, it's Kerry. I think it's just taking the time to actually think about it. Like, my mind is racing at the moment with what you're saying, and I know we've been through some of this stuff before, but it's like trying to make it gel with couples, and then I've got to be very careful with other services that I do about what I put up about those, and for naming ceremonies. So it's just getting your head around what you've got to put in there.
And I think for you, this is where something like this would work really well for you, Kerry, because you have a number of different masters in terms of clients. You've got baby showers, naming days. You've got, you know, even your MC work, your funerals, and your wedding ceremonies, and everything in between, right? Commitment ceremonies. And so when you're looking at creating something like an Airtable for yours, I'd be looking at a group that serves each of those different content. So your context might be different. It might be weddings, naming days, baby showers, pet funerals, you know. And so therefore what you do is you post against the context of the type of service and something in relation to that, rather than more that other piece that we're doing. So you may not do a specialty day or behind the scenes, or you could, but the context is different. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we use the specialty days model and that strategy, but you just, in your week, you say, okay, Mondays and Tuesdays of the first week, I talk about weddings. It's Tuesdays, Wednesdays on the second week, Wednesdays, Thursdays. And so you're weaving them through on different days. Yeah. And then the other days might be naming days. And then you just choose groups that then fit that target market.
Yeah.
So there's actually some really good ways we can have a play around with the structure for that.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Elizabeth.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the jargon thing, and, you know, when you speak that language, you know, like vibration and energy and all of the things that's the way I speak. And obviously that's the jargon that you're talking about. Getting my head around how to not speak like that on you know, and how do you change that language? Like, what do you say instead when that's where your whole mind takes you, your whole being?
It's such a great question, because I was at a workshop on the weekend and somebody was using the term manifesting, how it manifests. How does this manifest in your life? And I remember, I think 10 years ago, I had someone use the term manifesting. People would be like, what are you talking, like what? like, is it just appearing in front of me type kind of the view of what manifesting is? But manifesting has become part of our kind of daily jargon or daily language. So the way I would imagine, the way that to answer that question and off, on spec, would be to say, you want to think about where you want to take them. So where are they now? So if your potential client who needs this work is thinking, have a think about how they talk about what they need. And so what you talk about is bridging that gap. And again, this is the perfect analogy when we're talking about content, is how do we take them from where they are to understanding vibration and manifestation, spirituality and states of being? How do we bring those together? So if we think about that as their journey, so their customer journey and their buying pathway may not actually be about wanting to product. It's actually about recognizing the value and the connection between who they are now and what they're doing and words like vibration. So it might simply be talking about, and me just coming up as I talk to you, because vibration, we're essentially talking about energy range. Am I right? We're talking about energy levels. So we talk about it from a very, simple structure about, do you sometimes wake up and feel like your energy is incredibly low? And then and then through the day you might peak at lunchtime, but then by the evening you're back being low. Or there are periods of time where you're constantly having this kind of low wave of energy through you. So we call that vibration. And we call it vibration because for me, vibration is a beautiful, happy word. It has a sense of power to it versus energy, which can be, people say I've got low energy. It's that kind of like, whereas try to say vibration with a sad tone, it's actually really hard. Like, I don't know if you've ever visualized, even low vibration still has a positive energy to it. Yeah. So we might be bridging the gap by saying, and we might liken vibration to the ringing of a bell or a gong, and you can have a light touch where the vibration is low, and the harder you hit it and the more energy it creates, the stronger the vibration. So
that could be a great post around educating as well.
Correct. But I'm also inspiring because I'm having this sense of, if you imagine every day you approach and you're just touching your vibration is low, so it's like a little gong and you can barely hear it. And then as you hit it harder and heavier and you get more excited and you lean into it, you get this stronger vibration, stronger energy and stronger sound. And that's how you want to live. So we're using metaphor to connect with educating people about what vibration is.
Yeah, sounds good. Plus also, as you were talking, I thought also for me, if I'm looking at where they're at and instead of where I want to take them, what steps, it's more about talking about their feelings, their emotions, their moods.
Correct.
And then do you want to get out of that? Yeah. Excellent. Thanks, Jenny.
And without sounding flippant, but it's almost that idea of, there's opportunity for you to think about that. If you imagine the trend, particularly with the word spirit and spirituality and that kind of connection and the learnings and being able to, share knowledge and wisdom of the past. So there's lots of ways that in your environment, using metaphors and analogies, and it will bring people along that pathway to make them comfortable with using words like that without feeling like they're kind of like, this is not me.
Woo-woo and all that sort of stuff, which is exactly what I need because I'm personally not a very woo-woo person.
No.
Even though I'm very spiritual, I'm very grounded. So it's like taking them through that process without it, being woo-woo. Yeah, exactly.
And it comes to mind when you talk about like that, what comes to mind is sometimes I write at the bottom of my posts when I write kind of for other people, we're talking about what people think we should be. And then we talk about who we are. It'd be something like saying, if you're looking for me, I'll be the one sitting behind the desk looking like a corporate employee, kind of something completely different to what they imagine you should be. Like you're not, and I think, and creating those stark contrasts. Contrast is another beautiful way of creating engagement.
Yeah.
Excellent. Any more questions, comments?
Right.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Christine? Good.
Actually, I was just wondering about the Airtable. I haven't actually used Airtable, so I can see you've got everything popped in there. Is it something that will post automatically to your social medias?
It doesn't post automatically to socials. That's the only thing it doesn't. But what it does, if you're focusing on, if your two platforms are Instagram and Facebook, what it does is it organizes your time, organizes your posts ready to go, and then you can basically open up Facebook Creator Studio and then just schedule everything into the back end of Facebook Creator Studio on the pages that you own. But then the other groups that you don't own, that you're just members of, you'd have to do live.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Great
Lovely.
question.
Thank you.
Cool. So I'm just going to finish up the last couple of slides. So I mentioned the Content Collective that we run every fortnight. And this is a program that basically where we go through the clarity of messages and we talk through some all the different challenges, how to schedule, how to structure, how to build engagement on all different types of platforms. So not just social media, we look at resources like proposals and landing pages and such as well. If your content is all clean and you're like, yep, I'm good with content, but I really don't get that structure piece around business, then that's the other coaching program I run is the Messy Middle coaching program, alternate weeks to the Content Collective. And we basically look at business structure, clarity, structure, and process. That's right. Thanks, Elizabeth. Have a great day. And so if you would like to have more information about either of those two programs, or you want to have a little bit more deeper conversation about Airtable, book a call with me. I love old school. I love having a chat, and happy to run and talk to you about the coaching programs, or to give you a little bit more information about how we use Airtable to support your business and to support what you're currently trying to do with your work. Thank you so very much for being with me today. It's been an absolute pleasure. You'll get a recording of this, and I also have a little one-pager little PDF that will come in your email this week, which just covers off the 5 key areas around creating content and some of the key things to remember when you're pulling your content together. That'll come as a PDF download, PDF document, so you can pop that up as you're writing your content, just to remind you of those 5 key areas. Thank you so very much. Have an awesome day. Look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye now.